The last witness. The case no one dared to fight. The village of Ekuta was small, hidden deep in the forest of southern Nigeria. It was a place where fear ruled, and silence was law. The people whispered, their eyes always watching, afraid to speak too loudly. And at the center of that fear stood one man, Elder Maduka, the self-proclaimed ruler of Ekuta, a man whose hands were stained with the blood of those who dared to oppose him. For years, the villagers had suffered under his rule. He controlled the land, the markets, and even the police. If anyone stood against him, they disappeared, just like Baba Chike, the old farmer who refused to sell his land, and Mama Ada, the woman who dared to ask why her son was beaten to death. But this time, things were different. This time, a lawyer had come to fight. Adanna Okafor, the outsider. Adanna Okafor had never been to Ekuta before, but she had heard the stories. She was a young, brilliant lawyer from the city, determined to fight for justice. When she received a desperate letter from Mama Chike, the widow of Baba Chike, she knew she couldn't turn away. The moment she stepped into the village, she could feel the tension. People watched her from behind wooden doors and dusty windows. She could feel their fear, but she wasn't afraid. She had come for justice. Her case was simple: Baba Chike had been murdered. Witnesses had seen Elder Maduka's men dragging him into the forest. But no one had spoken. No one dared. Now, she was here to make sure that changed. But she didn't know that she was already being watched. The case should have been easy. The evidence was clear. But the problem was, no one would testify. Every person she approached shook their heads, eyes filled with terror. "I can't help you," they whispered. "Leave before it's too late." The only person who had been willing to speak was Nkem, a young woman who worked at the market. She had seen everything. She had watched as Baba Chike begged for his life. She had seen Elder Maduka's men beat him to death. She was the last witness. But before Adanna could bring her forward, Nkem disappeared. Adanna searched everywhere: her house, the market, the roads. She was gone. The village was silent. No one wanted to talk. Then, one night, a rock crashed through Adanna's window. Attached to it was a note. "Leave now, or you will never leave at all." Her hands trembled, but her resolve only grew stronger. She would not run. She had to find Nkem. And she had to do it fast. The shadows of fear. That night, Adanna and Chike Jr., Baba Chike's son, ventured into the forest. The villagers had told them Nkem had been taken. And there was only one place she could be, the old shrine. As they moved through the trees, the air was thick with fear. Every shadow felt like a pair of eyes. Every rustling leaf made Adanna's heart race. Then, she heard it. A muffled cry. She rushed forward and found Nkem tied to a tree, her face bruised and bleeding. "Adanna," Nkem whispered, tears in her eyes. "You shouldn't have come." Before Adanna could respond, a deep, cruel voice echoed through the trees. "I was wondering when you would come." Elder Maduka stepped forward, flanked by 5 men. Each held a machete. Adanna's blood ran cold. They had walked into a trap. She could see the cruel smile on Maduka's face, the gleam of his blade under the moonlight. "No one fights me and lives," he said, stepping closer. "You are no different." Adanna knew she was about to die. But then, gunshots ripped through the night. Maduka's men turned, their faces twisting in shock. Villagers stormed the shrine, armed with sticks, rocks, and machetes. Leading them was Pojide, the oldest elder in Ekuta. "You have ruled by fear for too long, Maduka," he shouted. "It ends tonight." A battle erupted. Maduka's men fought hard, but for the first time, the villagers fought back. Adanna quickly untied Nkem and helped her escape as Maduka disappeared into the darkness. But this fight wasn't over yet. Not until justice was served. The trial of the century. The next morning, the entire village gathered at the square. For the first time in years, Maduka had lost control. Adanna stood in the center, facing the judge. Maduka was in chains, his men captured. This man, Adanna said, her voice strong, has terrorized this village for too long. But today, justice will be served. The villagers, once afraid, now stood united. One by one, they spoke. Nkem testified. She told them how she had seen Baba Chike's murder. Jide testified. He spoke of the many crimes committed in silence. Chike Jr. testified. He stood tall, fighting back tears as he described his father's murder. And then, the judge made his ruling. Elder Maduka, for your crimes of murder, oppression, and terror, you are sentenced to life in prison. A roar of cheers erupted from the crowd. Justice had won. For the first time in years, the people of Ekuta were free. And as Adanna stood there, she knew this was only the beginning. Because there were many more battles to fight. And she was ready for them all. A new dawn. As the sun set, Adanna stood on a hill, looking down at the village she had helped free. Tond walked up beside her. Will you be leaving now? She smiled. No. There are more cases to fight. More people who need help. For too long, the people had lived in fear. But today, justice had finally come. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe or follow for more powerful stories like this. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. What do you think about the case? Let us know in the comments.